everyone. Scott Hansen here from NFL Red Zone. I hope you're checking out 1 hour of 5 Yard Rush, one of the best podcasts on NFL football in the UK.
Yo, what's poppin', Rush Nation? Hey, we are back. Back like Marmite on toast. I don't know. I haven't had much. You know, I haven't had Marmite on toast in so long. I used to have it all the time, and now I haven't had it in ages. This is crazy. I don't know what I'm talking about. How are you, my friend?
I'm good. I haven't had Marmite on toast for years, and that's because it tastes like garbage. So
Stop it.
It's absolutely awful.
It's not. It really isn't.
No, it really does. Which is mad because I like Twiglets and I like yeasty things, but Marmite, no.
Marmite on toast is love it.
Okay, well,
it's just
you either love it or you hate it, right?
Well, this is very true. Also, it's a washing up nightmare. If you leave your knife with Marmite on for too long, it's just absolute carnage when it comes to washing up. So
I've never had that problem, luckily. So.
Well, there you go. You never will now because you'll think, oh, no, I need to wash this. Stop said it's a nightmare. So,
yeah, no, I hear you. But yeah, it's good. We are in April. We're in draft month. We are gearing towards, and now we've got a good idea what our teams are going to start looking like. We move our attention to the draft. Pitsy says, can't beat a hot bit of toast with lashings of butter and Marmite. You can, mate, but, I'll start with, watching your team win a Super Bowl is better. Appreciate that, for a lot of people, that's something that's not experienced and it's hard to tell. But, yeah, I definitely think your team winning a Super Bowl or, there's many, many better foods out there, which we're not going to sidetrack on. But
You don't need to go off and bring in Super Bowl winnings and stuff like that just because you don't like Marmite. There's it's either a Marmite thing or breakfast. Would just keep this to breakfast time, although I imagine there's been a Super Bowl at breakfast time. But if there was a Marmite counter on screen right now, which you would only see if you came over to YouTube, hit the bell and the likes up and subscribe, you'd see it. There's a Marmite one for me and nothing for Murf. But we're just going to have to keep track. Because we don't have a Marmite counter. We are not that fancy that we've got a Marmite counter on our live stream. See, people come for the fancy football content and they get smacked in the face with Marmite. You just don't get that on other pods, Murf.
Well, nor should you have to put up with it. But there you go, we're here. And it's,
that is very true.
We've moved on. So draft month, we're going to start having a preview. We're going to start looking at these rookies now in a bit more detail, in particular zeroing in on the fantasy aspects of these players. So today I thought we would cover off the quarterback and the tight end position. And normally we would probably just do the quarterback position on its own. But this class is, as we said last week, and we've said for a while now, this class is particularly weak and it probably doesn't deserve its own episode. So we're going to partner them with the tight ends, and then we'll do separate episodes on the running backs and the wide receivers. So I think it's important to sort of highlight that, like NFL teams, if you had left this year to get yourself a quarterback on your dynasty rosters, you are very much in a spot of bother here. I think it's fair to say that there is not an elite talent in this draft class at all. And I think for fantasy that probably resonates just as well, that there is very little talent here for sort of starting fantasy quarterbacks. What's your initial take on this quarterback class, Stocks?
You smashed it right on the head. I mean, if you'd have gone back a few weeks, before free agency and stuff like that, then potentially a couple of these guys could have had better landing spots than is now available potentially to them. We were talking about Cam Ward, Shadur Sanders at the top of the draft. Are we going to see both of them at the top of the draft now? Are we? It's it's thinning out real bad. It's thinning out worse than my hairline at 38. Yeah. The trouble is, I don't think there's players here either that have got the ability to sit behind a starter currently and develop into a decent enough talent. We tend to see streaks of that talent available in college, and then they just get better sitting behind a starter. I want to say Patrick Mahomes, that's a bit of a trope take, but that sort of thing where they sit behind a starter like Alex Smith and develop on the talent we already see. But a lot of these guys I have concerns with, and I don't know whether they can be ironed out enough to become a decent starter, especially for fantasy when we already have a landscape that we know and trust.
Yeah, I completely agree. So when we did the show on Friday, I know you weren't here. Oh, just breaking news. The Raiders and QB Geno Smith have agreed to terms on a 2-year contract extension.
Interesting.
Well, they traded for him, so I think that kind of made sense. But yes, so as we said on the show with Phil on Friday, he was phenomenal, by the way. I sort of pointed out that mock drafts have been driving me crazy this year over any other year because of this necessity to put Shedeur Sanders at the top of the draft board. And I didn't get it because the NFL are telling you that they don't rate Shedeur Sanders. All of these teams that Shedeur Sanders was a landing spot for, as you say, have now gone away, which is the NFL telling you, we don't think this kid is it. And rightfully so, because he's a system quarterback. He fits 4 teams pretty well. And all 4 of those teams have quarterbacks on the long contracts. So it is just this case of, up until this week, we've been seeing Shedeur Sanders go in the top 3 of mock drafts. And I've just been sitting there going, well, I don't need to read the rest of the mock draft because it's absolute lunacy. It's not going to happen. And then this week, lo and behold, it's starting to drip feed into the main media now that Shedeur Sanders is not going to go in the top 3. Adam Schefter said it on the Pat McAfee podcast. Daniel Jeremiah put Shedeur Sanders way, way later in his mock draft. The other NFL.com analyst, his name's just escaped me, he has moved Shedeur Sanders all the way back in his mock draft. And, I think we're at this point now where people need to get comfy with the fact that there is only one quarterback going in the top 20 of this NFL draft, and he's going 1 overall in Cam Ward. Now, I would make the argument that actually there should be no more quarterbacks going in round 1. But teams might roll the dice here and they might just go back into the end of round 1 and take a quarterback and give themselves the 5th-year option. And that could happen. But realistically, once we expect Aaron Rodgers, I'm fairly confident will sign for the Steelers, I don't see an immediate landing spot for Sanders or for Dart that warrants a first-round pick, except for the Cleveland Browns potentially, the New Orleans Saints thinking about next year. But even then, I just think you're wasting draft capital. But at least those moving up from the top of the 2nd to the end of the 1st to get that 5th-year option would make sense. It's not that much to move up the 5 or 6 spots to secure that 5th-year option. So I'm not going to sit here and shoehorn that there's only going to be one quarterback. I wouldn't be surprised if there's only one quarterback that goes in round 1. But I think realistically, we are now going to start seeing mock drafts that will reflect Sanders and Dart going way, way, way later in round 1 or not at all.
Yeah. I think it's we sit here and we chew the cud over fantasy football and players and the NFL and the draft, and we're giving our personal insight, and you certainly take a look at stats and analysis and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, these guys' jobs. And if the NFL turn around and say this guy's not going in the top 15, 20, who are we to then say, well, actually, if you look at this number, it suggests. I mean, come on, these guys they're setting the paving stones for us to play on. It's not the other way around. And I think
No.
sometimes
I
we just
get that.
no, I'm not saying you're doing it. I'm saying
Mm.
I think sometimes we just think it's just an internet thing that we can have some sort of. If everybody puts Shadur Sanders in the top 3 on their mock drafts they're doing on their lunch break, then it will happen, and it won't.
No, and I think you just have to follow what's being said and what actions are happening, and I think that's what's important to me. The Giants went and got Jameis Winston and then Russell Wilson. That is telling you they're not going to take a quarterback round 1.
Yeah.
And yet for the week or so afterwards, they were still putting Shadur Sanders at 3. I'm like, they have told you exactly where they are on Shadur Sanders. If he fell in the second round, fine. But they're not taking him at 3. So it's just this. It goes back to what we say quite a lot about groupthink and confirmation bias. It's people want things to happen and therefore they're trying to manifest it. But that doesn't mean that should happen. And the other thing, and this is the thing that I think people really struggle with college players, you can be an excellent college player. Mm-hmm. You can be a Heisman Trophy candidate. You can have all the attributes to be an absolute sensation in college and not be an NFL caliber player.
Yep.
And that is what blows people's mind. Is they're like, well, if they're good in college, they have to be good in the pros. And it's not like that, because of the fact that, especially in Shadur Sanders' case, he's playing in a conference where he's not playing against NFL standard guys. He's playing against very, very decent standard of players, but he's not playing NFL standard guys.
Yep.
And if you think there are about 1,000, 1,100 jobs in the NFL for players, you're basically saying the top 1,100 players in the world play in the NFL, because there is no other league really in the world.
Yep.
So as a result of that, you're playing the best of the top 0.0001% of players in the entire world. And unless you play in the SEC, and this isn't a big like, oh, the SEC is the best thing in the world. I know people hate that. But unless you play in the SEC, anywhere else you play in college isn't reflective of that week in, week out. And so Shadur Sanders is a player with a great talent. And I think I said, I don't know where I said this. I might have said this on the College Days Nat Coombs podcast, that I admire Shadur Sanders in the fact that I think he has genuinely got the absolute maximum out of his talent. That I think he genuinely has done as well as he could do in a capacity to where he is going to get drafted probably still in the top 50, if not the top 30, 32 players in this draft class, which is an incredible feat. But his limitations as a player, it's not his fault. He has maximized his talent to the best of his ability, but his game does not suit the NFL and the current NFL scheme. 25 years, 30 years ago, he could have made it work. In the 80s, he would have been an exceptional quarterback, because in the sense of they played a lot of West Coast offense, right? The short, incisive. If he was on the 49ers of the 80s, he would have been an excellent quarterback. He really would have done, because he suits that skill set. But times have changed. He is a short, distant, accurate quarterback. And that's great. And if you look at his stats without ever watching him, his stats look amazing. But when you see the types of throws and the scheme that he plays in, it doesn't correlate to an NFL offense. He doesn't have a strong deep ball. He's not particularly accurate on the outside of the numbers. He's not accurate throwing above 10 or 20 yards. He's reasonably slow. In college, 15.3% of his passing yards came on screens. 69.5% is his on target rate of throws. 10 yards down the field or more were accurate, but it's still not that high. And then you start considering some of the things that he does struggle with. It took him over 3 seconds to throw the ball last year.
Yeah.
You know, he's an accurate quarterback, but he does struggle with, you know, yards per attempt. It was 8.7, which is very low. He's just a player who is very good at what he does, but he's also a lot like Caleb Williams, where if you get pressure on him, he takes the sack, and he will take a lot of sacks, and he will struggle because he doesn't have that quick release. He doesn't have that ability to get rid of the football quickly. And I just think I'm trying to swing this back to fantasy. If Shedeur Sanders is available in your draft, there is absolutely no upside to take him. Unless you're in a league where there is like a completion percentage bonus, where like if you complete over 65% of your passes, you get, or every completion is worth X amount of points. That's the only advantage you have with a Shedeur Sanders, because he will complete a high percentage of his throws, because the throws he will attempt are very low risk throws. But he's not going to bring elite. He's not going to bring you a box score that is going to score you a lot of fantasy points.
So
that's the problem.
Yeah. So if Cam Ward, are we saying Cam Ward's going to go 1 to the Titans? Is that what we're projecting now? Is that how the world sees it?
Yeah, I would be surprised if that didn't happen. And I think if he doesn't go at 1 to the Titans, he will go to the Browns. I don't think Cam Ward escapes the top 2. Now, my thought on Cam Ward is this, and I said this quite a few times, and again, I don't quite know where I said it. If Cam Ward was in last year's draft class, he's a second-round pick. I don't think he's as good as the guys who were drafted last year. I don't think he's as good as Caleb. I don't think he's as good as Drake May. I don't think he's as good as Jaden Daniels. I don't think he's as good as JJ McCarthy. I don't think he's as good as Bo Nix. And I don't think he's as good as Michael Penix Jr. So I would have had him like QB7 in last year's draft class. And I don't think that's unfair. I don't think that's I don't sit that all those guys we mentioned were taken in the top 12 of the NFL draft. I don't think Cam Ward is in that class of quarterback. So it's not a big slight on Cam Ward. I think he's a decent quarterback. I think he will be a reasonable starting level quarterback in the NFL. But I don't think he is elite. I don't think he's going to come into the league and set the world on fire. Famous last words. Could happen. I'm not an expert, but I don't see, for me, so when I evaluate rookies, I put them in 5 categories. Potentially elite, a weekly starter, a flex appeal, a dart throw, a very low appeal for fantasy football. I don't have any quarterback as potentially elite at any point. I have 2 in this class that are weekly starters for fantasy football. Cam Ward is one of them, but I think he's very low end.
So where does that, if he does start for the Titans, where does that put him as a quarterback for fantasy?
Well, I worry about his supporting cast.
Yes.
I don't really know who is helping him out there in terms of getting him elite numbers. Calvin Ridley's there. That is reasonably exciting, I suppose. Obviously I've done no projections because I don't know what that looks like. Do I see him breaking the top 15? Probably not, unless there's injuries that break his way. And what I mean by that is those above him get injured. I don't think he's a top 15 quarterback in fantasy football next year if he starts at the Titans week 1.
Which is rough.
But I also don't think he is Bryce Young and he's in that bottom 4 or 5 either. I don't think he's like not scoring fantasy points, but I just don't think he is. I think he's a starter player in Superflex. I probably would not start him in any one QB format, and I think that's kind of just where I sit with him. Could be wrong, lots could change, but I don't see a high production ceiling. I think for me, my big concerns, I think he is probably where I like him is he's going to take risks. He's going to throw for a good amount of yards, but this kid's going to throw a lot of interceptions in the NFL. He is, for me, a cross between Caleb Williams. If you got an amalgamation of Caleb Williams in terms of time to throw and decision making when under pressure, and you mix him with the hero mode that Jameis Winston had of I'm just going to sling it no matter what. That is Cam Ward. I think if I was as a neutral who has absolutely no opinion on the Titans, good or bad, they're the Titans. That's not a slight. I don't have a strong opinion to like them or hate them. They exist and I watch them, but they haven't been a team that have excited for quite a few years. For a fantasy perspective, you would see what Derrick Henry kind of did, and that was kind of all you really paid attention to. They will actually be quite exciting to watch with Cam Ward under center. They will actually be more entertaining. They will be highlight reels. You'll see them on Red Zone quite a bit because there is going to be a bit more about them with Cam Ward under center. They will be more exciting to watch, but there will be turnovers and there will be a lot of mistakes, which I think as a rookie, let him get him out. Like, the Titans are not winning the South next year unless, I mean, it's a pretty open division, I guess, but I would expect Houston to win it.
Yeah.
But I do think that let him make the mistakes, let him just go out there and play and ball, and he'll have weeks where he'll be very fantasy relevant because he will throw for a ton of yards. But I think a lot of mistakes and a lot of sacks, he'll make a lot of interceptions and the confidence will get jilted. It will be a very much like up and down rookie season, in my opinion, for him.
Yeah, agreed. So bar Cam Ward, there isn't anyone else that we're saying is fantasy relevant right now, right?
No, I think there's one. I think it depends on where he goes and what opportunity he gets. And it's, I preface this by a quarterback I don't think is any good.
Okay.
I don't think so. In fantasy football, you don't need to be good to be fantasy relevant.
Nope.
I think my opinions on Justin Fields have been pretty clear that I don't think he's good enough to start in the NFL. Yeah, he gets starting worthy opportunities because he's different. And he is box score fantasy relevant because he gets a lot of rushing yards. And there is a quarterback who is very similar to the Justin Fields kind of profile in this draft class. And it's only because of his athletic traits, and he's an athletic freak, that it's going to take one person to love him and draft him quite high, that there could be some interest next year, and that's Jalen Milroe. Now, I preface that again by saying I don't think he is good enough to start in the NFL. But that is not going to, that, as we have proven time and time again, is not a barrier to getting a starting job in the NFL at quarterback. It just isn't. Like, it just isn't, because his skill set and athleticism is just so different to others that there are coordinators and there are teams that will give him a chance. And if he gets a chance, he will be fantasy relevant, and he will probably, if I said this, if he got a starting job day one, which I don't think would happen, but let's say he went in as a competing and the person he was competing with got injured in training camp or in preseason, and he got to the starting role week one, and I said who would score more fantasy points weeks 1 to 17 between Cam Ward and Jalen Milroe, I would bet Jalen Milroe. I think he will score more fantasy points. Do I think he is good, and do I think he will be worthy of keeping a job for years? No. But I think he would, when he plays, he will be a quarterback who will score fantasy points, and he's the other one I've got as a weekly starter.
Interesting. Do you think he goes? Where do you think he's going to go?
It's a great question. I genuinely don't know. Like I think there's 5 teams that could take him. I think there's 5 or 6 teams that could take him, and I think if let's say this, if we get into round 2 and the Browns take him, his stock goes to the moon. Like his stock goes to the moon because the opportunity to beat out Kenny Pickett. Like, I'm not being funny. That's a winnable job. All of a sudden, Jalen Milroe becomes the QB1 in this draft class for fantasy football.
Yeah, which we've seen previously. Right. Like we've seen it. This is not an unheard of scenario where a quarterback goes late, finds himself a job, and somehow just turns up, wins the job. And then is completely relevant for fantasy. And
let's just look at the last few years. Dak Prescott, Russell Wilson, Jalen Hurts, Brock Purdy are all quarterbacks that were drafted. I mean, Jalen Hurts was a 2nd round pick. I mean, even Will Levis was a 2nd round pick.
Yeah,
he got the job. Like he was no good, but he got the job. It proves like the barrier to getting a starting quarterback job isn't like being good is not a requirement. It just, can you do something different? And I think there are opportunities for Milroe in this world that he could end up as a starter at some point in his rookie season. What if he went to the Colts?
Yep. And
you've got that hot mess of Daniel Jones and Anthony Richardson. There is a chance that Jalen Milroe goes in and blows them both out of the water. Like, it could happen. I don't think it would, but these are the things you can't really legislate for. Like, it could happen, and that's where Jalen Milroe is arguably the one domino piece for fantasy football at the quarterback position that is really worth watching. I don't care where Shedeur Sanders lands. He can land anywhere. I don't care. I don't even think he's worth having in a super flex draft. Like, other than the fact he starts, if he gets a starting gig, like, I don't care. Like, there isn't enough there for me to care about having Shedeur Sanders. Again, it's not a slight. I think he is. People sit there and think, "Oh, hating on him and Deion Sanders and all the paparazzi and all that." I don't care about that. I genuinely think the man has done extremely well to get into the position that he is, and I think he's maximized his talent. I just don't, for fantasy football. He's just nothing. Like, it's just meh. I don't care. Like, it doesn't. It's the same with Bryce Young. When Bryce Young, I didn't care where he went in fantasy football. It didn't matter because he was never affecting the box score. Like, it doesn't. Yeah. It doesn't matter where these guys land. But Jalen Milroe is someone that is far more interesting, and he's someone I will have far more watchful eye on than Shedeur Sanders, than Jackson Dart. I don't care, because I don't think Jackson Dart is going to affect the NFL, as you kind of have alluded to. I don't think Shedeur Sanders is going to have a huge impact in the NFL. But I think Jalen Milroe could. Whether I think he deserves to is irrelevant. I genuinely think he's someone who could.
He could. Rush Nation, we are halfway through the show, and I'm still winning 1-0 on the Marmite chat, just in case anyone else wanted to get involved. Murf, tight ends. How many tight ends?
Before we get into tight ends, there is one name at the quarterback position that I want people to keep an eye on. And there's one spot in terms of landing spot that people should keep an eye on. The quarterback I'm most intrigued about in this entire draft class is Kyle McCord. I think Kyle McCord arguably could be the best quarterback in this class.
Okay.
I genuinely believe that Kyle McCord will have a better NFL career than Shedeur Sanders.
Okay.
Yeah, but I remember a few years ago when we talked about Trey Lance and Mac Jones, and I said I think Mac Jones will have a better career than Trey Lance. I even remember talking about who's the quarterback, Davis Mills. I said I'd rather have Davis Mills than Trey Lance. I will argue Davis Mills had a better NFL career than Trey Lance.
I don't think you have to argue that. I think it's stone cold fact.
Well, but that's my point. Is that I genuinely think that there are players who aren't trendy that I think are exceptionally good, and I genuinely believe that Kyle McCord is a player that people should watch, and I will be taking him in every single rookie draft at some point because I think he's going to be free. But if Kyle McCord lands at the Rams, to the moon. I'm investing I'm all in. Because I think whoever lands as the quarterback behind Matt Stafford in the Rams is going to be phenomenally interesting. Because I think Matt Stafford's got a year.
Yeah.
And I think whoever gets that job is a contender to be the incumbent, to get the promotion. If that's Kyle McCord in a Sean McVay offense with Devontae Adams and Puka Nacua, sign me up, baby. I'm all in. Let's go. I'll get a jersey. Let's go. I'm all in on that. If Kyle McCord lands at the Rams, I will go mad. Because I think that will be genuinely he could go to the moon. I just think this kid's got all the throws. His time to throw is good. His mechanics are good. He doesn't rush. He's not a great scrambler, but here's an interesting reason, right, for Kyle McCord. Kyle McCord, I'm just pulling this up, just to make sure I've got it right, because it's genuinely impressive. Kyle McCord dropped back 640 times to pass last year.
That sounds like a lot.
Right? That's 77 more than the next closest player in the draft class.
That's that's a whole game more.
That's more than the whole game. 77 more. That's 2 games more.
That's
in a 12-game season. Yeah. He threw the ball 640 times. Dropped back to pass 640 times last season.
Absolute gunslinger.
Absolute gunslinger. His time to throw 2.4 seconds is the fastest in the draft class. He also threw the lowest rate of passes at or behind the line of scrimmage, which means he throws the ball forward. He doesn't do these dump off passes and screens. No. He's launching. He's going down the field, baby. He's vertical. I think he's phenomenal. I just think he's got everything. He doesn't scramble, sure. But his completion percentage from a clean pocket is decent. I think everything else about him is decent. Sign me up to Kyle McCord. He'll make mistakes and he'll need to learn and he'll need some coaching. But if you partner him with Sean McVay, then to the moon we go. Kyle McCord will be an NFL star. And I genuinely believe that. So if you want a sleeper at quarterback, that's my guy.
Okay.
Do you have one?
A sleeper at quarterback?
Yeah.
No, my history of picking sleepers at quarterback is notoriously terrible. So this year I'm staying away. I do not have one that I think no, because the class is so bad. I don't. There isn't anyone I want to tie my flag to.
Yeah, fair. Okay, let's do Titans.
Okay. I have 5 on my list.
Okay.
I don't think they're all fantasy relevant.
Okay.
I'm just saying. I have 5 on my list. Who do you think? Who is your number 1 tight end?
Tyler Warren.
Okay.
And I was there before a lot of people, I think, in terms of before it was kind of fashionable. I was there. I just love this guy's tape. I think we talked about this a while ago. I watched his tape and he is just so much fun. His tape is phenomenal for so many reasons, but the guy so last season he had I'm just checking this. He rushed 26 times for 218 yards and 4 touchdowns.
Yep.
He passed. He went 3 of 6 for 35 yards and a touchdown throwing the football. He punted, by the way, the football last season. Yeah.
Stop it.
Yeah, mate, he had a punt. Punted the football last year. So he threw the ball, he rushed the ball, he obviously caught the ball, and he punts. Like he does it all. Like I imagine if you want him in at linebacker, he'll go and do that too. Like the guy can do everything. Like he's multi-utility. You can scheme up trick plays about him. He's absolutely phenomenal. Like he is just nearly 50% of his targets resulted in a first down or touchdown. He caught 62% of his contested catches, 19 targets in the red zone, catching 16 of them for 7 touchdowns. He just was phenomenal. Like he had more yards against man coverage than any player in the draft class, and that includes wide receivers. Beat them all. Like Tyler Warren is fun, man. Like I just think, give me Tyler Warren. If Tyler Warren ends up on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, then that is me. Like I am all in. Like I'm gonna go mad. Like when Bucky Irving became a Buccaneer last year, and I went mad. Like I just to the moon. Let's go.
Yes. Okay. I would be happy with that. If that happened, I would be happy with that for you personally and for fantasy purposes. I think that would work out pretty well. Where do you think he goes? How early do you think he's going to be picked?
I mean, I think he goes in round 1.
Yeah.
Now, do I think that tight end should be drafted round 1 is a different question, but I think he will go round 1. I don't think he goes in the top 15 like people are projecting, but I do think he could go not long after that in round 1.
There was a few mocks I did before we signed Evan Ingram where he's there at 20, and I've just smashed the button to bring him in.
Yeah.
But now we have an Evan Ingram. I'm 100% convinced we're going running back in round 1 at 20. It would not surprise me at this point.
Yeah.
But we're not here to talk running back. Yeah, Tyler Warren, he's my number 1. Just I have here. You're not looking at just production. You are looking at dominance for Tyler Warren. He's that guy. And it's so clean. What Tyler Warren does is so clean as well. It's not messy. He's so productive. I love it.
Yeah, I genuinely think, for me, I love him more than Brock Bowers. I mean, I do. By the way, the latest mock drafts, so just you asked about where he goes. The latest mock drafts for April, okay? So I'm just going to do April's mock drafts. The latest he goes, one has him at 18 to the Seahawks. There are no other mocks that have him going after 14. The amount of people that have him going to the Colts is absolutely absurd because the Colts just don't care about tight ends. And if he ended up at the Colts, I would cry for a very, very, very long time. So they've got him at 7 to the Jets. They've got him at 5 to the Jaguars. I mean, if the Jags take him at 5, that is just wild because that team is awful. 12 to the Cowboys. I don't see it. 18 to the Seahawks. I get it. I don't think that would happen. 8 to the Panthers. Now, that one makes some sense. I think that's too early, and they have other needs, but I get it. 10 to the Bears. Yeah, I mean, with Ben Johnson, I totally get that. That would make a lot of sense. But, yeah, I think it's interesting that no one has him going later than 14, except for one mock getting him at 18. And I think he'll go later than that.
Okay. So, we've established he's a round 1 talent, going to be fantasy relevant wherever he goes, right?
I wouldn't say wherever he goes. I think if he goes on the Colts, I think he won't be. But yeah, a lot of places I think he could have a fantasy impact.
Okay. Who else? Who's next? Who have you got next?
So I have Colston Loveland.
Yep. Same.
He's my next. And these two I have in that potentially could be elite tier. Now, his mock draft stock is obviously to go after Tyler Warren, which makes sense. but he is still averaging like 19th. So
Okay.
the latest mock drafts have him going at 20 to the Broncos, which I don't see for reasons you've mentioned. 10 to the Bears, 22 to the Chargers, which makes sense. 9 to the Saints, 14 to the Colts, which I don't get. 29 to Washington, not after they've signed Zach Ertz. I don't see that. A lot of people have him going like as a lock to the Chargers. I think there's like 15, 16 mock drafts of the last 20 have him going to the Colts. The Chargers, sorry. So the 22, which is interesting, and I could see the logic on that. Whether I think that's, I don't know if that's what happens, but I do like Loveland. I think there's a lot to like about him. He is very young. He's not yet 21, or I think he has just turned 21. But I like a lot of what he does. His target share was absolutely insane. He was targeted on 37.6% of his routes,
Wow.
which is just phenomenal. Led the class in that. He lined up everywhere. 47.6% in the slot, 32.5% inline, 18.6% out wide. He posted 2.01 yards per route from the slot, which is great. But I think he was. I think he's really interesting. I don't think he's the finished article. I think there are some things he's not great against man, which is what we said about Tyler Warren is exceptional against man. We've got this shoulder injury. He didn't participate in the combine. How bad is that? We don't know. He actually doesn't really make guys miss. He was only credited with 3 forced missed tackles last season, which is very low. So I think there's some areas he needs to work on, but I do really like him. And at 21 or about to turn 21, then I think there's a lot that he can develop and improve upon. And can be a great player in the right system. Like if he goes to John Harbaugh, then or Jim Harbaugh, then he's going to get great coaching. If he goes to John Harbaugh, then even better, right? It might be a slow start, but I think he can be potentially phenomenal at the Ravens. But I think he's slightly landing spot dependent, but I do think he could go if he goes. If you think about it, if he goes like after 20, he's going to a good team.
Yeah, that's true.
Which I think also helps. Like I think if he went up the board and he went to like the Jets going with Justin Fields, I don't know how I would particularly feel about that. But I think if Loveland ends up at the Chargers, he's got Justin Herbert there. If he goes even later in that draft, he's going to be paired with a pretty good quarterback. What if he went to Kansas City at 31 and became the replacement for Travis Kelce? I mean, that would send people absolutely wild. I mean, there's so many ways this could go. He could go to Matt Stafford in LA at 26. They need the tight end. There's so many routes in which he could go that would be really, really fascinating. So, I think if he goes past 20 or 20 onwards, I think you're looking at that thinking, might not be a great rookie year, but I think going forward, there's a lot of production, a lot of things to like, and he's very young. So him not producing it at 21 years old in his rookie season is not going to be a big concern.
No. It's funny, isn't it? When we get into draft season, we talk about draft capital, and he slid down round 1, his draft capital's fallen or whatever. We tend to forget that the good teams are lower down in round 1, and these guys that we really like are suddenly on a really good team, and actually, it could be a good thing.
Yeah, no, really good, absolutely.
Do you have anyone else fantasy relevant?
So I would say they're the two that I think are the standouts that could be elite. The next guy on the list, I think, is incredibly interesting, which is Harold Fanning Jr. Now, he is even younger than Colston Loveland in the sense of he is not 21 until July. So he's incredibly young. Now, if you were doing mock drafts in December, January, and you were tracking this, Harold Fanning was like the consensus one in this position. Fanning was the guy that everyone wanted. He was the guy going in the top 10 of the NFL draft. And then all of a sudden, people started watching other tape, and then they fell in love with Tyler Warren and Colston Loveland. And I don't think that Fanning has gone down because of anything particularly bad that he has done. I think they've just seen that he has done. Well, I mean, his combine wasn't particularly good. His physical score was pretty poor. He did run the best 40 times, although he ran a brilliant 10-yard split. So he's kind of in this place where the combine probably didn't help him too much. The biggest knock on Fanning is he played in the MAC.
Yeah.
Now, we've talked about this already, about the fact that, college competition is, depending on where you are, could be elite to weak. The MAC is one of the worst conferences there is. And effectively, he's playing against, and I don't want to be rude when I say this, but he's not playing against many players that are going to be considered for the NFL draft or in the NFL at any point. Like, I don't know how many current players came from the MAC. I don't think it's more than 20 or 30 players of the current crop of players.
Please hold.
Yeah, I mean, I'm willing to be proven wrong on that, but I would be surprised if there are 30 plus players currently in the NFL that came from the MAC that are on NFL rosters.
Just let Google do its thing. 60 former MAC students.
But is that have ever played in the NFL? I'm talking about current rosters.
I mean, that's a hell of a question to type into Google. Let me see if this is any good. Sean Murphy Bunting, is he still playing?
Yeah. So as of the start of last season, this is according to Get Me Some Action, 60 former Mid-American Conference as the MAC student athletes were on active NFL rosters.
Yeah, that's what I've got.
That was on that was the start of last season. So, okay. So 60.
The Denver Broncos have 0 from the MAC.
Classic. Of course they do.
I'm just trying to think of Sky Moore, Kansas City Chiefs.
Sky Moore. Of course, don't forget in the MAC our favourite ever team, the Chippewas.
Fire up chips. Max Crosby.
There you go, Max Crosby. So, Max Crosby's an elite player.
I'm just looking down the list. There is Tampa Bay Buccaneers have 3. Well, had 3, I guess.
Who?
Luke Godeke.
Yeah, Luke Godeke. Is he still on the team?
Central Michigan. Fire up chips.
Of course he was.
Jose Ramirez, linebacker, Eastern Michigan, and Cody Thompson, wide receiver from Toledo.
Okay, I'll be surprised if Cody Thompson's still on.
He was practice squad, though, to be fair.
Yeah, okay.
So, of the entire list, 2 names stand out. 3 names, Cooper Rush.
Yeah, okay. Cooper Rush back up, cool. But that's my point, right? We've got a bit sidetracked. But yeah, that effectively there aren't that. He's not playing against many players in the MAC that are going to be NFL standard, and that's going to hurt him a little bit. He didn't particularly test well, but he does come with a lot of interesting traits, and I think that there is a strong profile there that can be used. But he's not the biggest. He's only 6'3". But yeah, I think there's a lot he can show. I think he's a really interesting, especially against zone. He's going to be particularly strong. But yeah, I think there's some interesting things to look at. I mean, the big comparison is he's a bit like Isaiah Likely, this kind of player that people find really hard to evaluate, didn't particularly test well, but actually there's a player in there. If you land in the right system with the right coach, then it could work out well. Like Isaiah Likely is sort of starting to get there. So, I think he's an interesting player to watch. I don't think he's going to be elite. I don't think he competes with the other two, but there is a player in there that I think is well worth sort of monitoring.
Yeah, agreed. Anybody else? Anybody else you think?
You said you had 5. So who were the other 2 that you?
I do. I've got Mason Taylor from LSU.
Yep.
Again, not going to be elite, but
yeah, I think could be a weekly starter. There's a lot of vacancies in starting tight end positions, so I think he's one that with a good landing spot. Coming from LSU, and he's young as well. He's not 21 until July or August, I think. So again, he's quite young. He's coming from LSU, so that really helps. He could go above Fanning. I don't think he will, but I think for me, there's a lot to like about him. Daniel Jeremiah really loved the way that he ran the gauntlet.
Right.
Doesn't drop the ball much. Very consistent. So
he's definitely a receiver. He's definitely a receiver.
It's definitely a strong receiver profile with him. There's a lot to like about him. I just think for me the things that are going to let him down is he didn't score many touchdowns, and also his yards per reception weren't particularly high. And I think they are the things that are going to. He could be one of these players that could develop again. He's still very young, good team, could work out really well with a coaching profile, but it wouldn't surprise me if he fell away. But I have him in that weekly starter caliber. I think if he lands in a good spot and gets some decent draft capital and a good team, he could be a really interesting player to watch for sure. Yeah.
And then my final one, who I really like, I enjoyed watching his tape from his last season, was Gunnar Helm out of Texas. I think he's he's taken a few years to get going as opposed to some of these younger fellas. But I think as his final season, I think he looked really good. And I think he could develop into a bit more as well. So interesting to see where he goes.
Yeah, I think for me, the things I sort of knock on him is the fact that it is one season we're judging on because basically he did nothing behind Jatarian Sanders, who hasn't really lit the NFL alight. Jatarian Sanders. So that's a slight concern. But I mean, look, he had a phenomenal year last year. But, for me, he played in such a high octane offense. How does he do?
It's almost numbers given.
Exactly that. Like, where does he go when it doesn't come down to that? He is also, and I mean this kindly, legitimately one of the worst run blockers.
Oh yeah,
ever. Like, he's terrible. Like he is effectively like the inflatable like thing you see at car showroom kind of things. Like, that's how much ability he has to kind of stop. You might as well put that in over him. Like, it's just a revolving door. Yeah, go on by, mate. Don't worry about it. No, I don't want to get my jersey dirty. Don't get me near. Like, he can't run block at all. I think this is what's funny. Pro Football Focus ranked him 260th in run blocking.
Pretty sure there's punters with better run blocking than that.
Yeah. But in terms of, he was third amongst all tight ends in run blocking snaps and still ranked 260th.
Wow. Stick him out there.
Yeah, I think that's pretty bad. I also believe, and I need to verify this, that he got injured at the combine, and that's why his 40 time was so bad. I think he ran like a 4.8 something, and then I think it came out that he got injured during the run or as a result of the run or before the run, and he felt he had, I can't remember the context, but I seem to remember that he got injured at the combine, which is also not particularly great. But yeah, he is an interesting player to watch and where he lands. I actually really like, and Lee will make sure I mention him, Elijah Arroyo from the U. That That's Miami for those that don't know what the U is. I think he's really interesting.
Yeah.
He's a big downfield guy. So 32% of his targets were 20 yards or more, which led this class. So he's not your traditional like stand in front of the like stand 5 yards to the line of scrimmage and get the ball. Now he's taking off down the field and he's a legitimate deep ball threat, which I love. He does get injured a lot. He's had a lot of injuries. He's not great in man coverage, but he has got. I think he's got knees that are equivalent to yours. He missed 2 years with knee injuries. I think he had 11 receptions before his final season, but I think the fact that he played all of last season was a positive. Like to come back from missing all of that time and be really effective. I think he's got a lot of attributes that go really well. He was great against zone coverage, not as great against man coverage, but he will blitz the zone. But there's so much fun that you can have with this as a utility player. I don't know if he's going to be. I think if he stays fit, he's a weekly starter. It's just whether or not he will. Like, I think he's one injury away from being at the end of his career, but I genuinely think he's a really exciting player. I love the fact he can just get vertical and get really down there. So I actually have Arroyo above Helm and Ferguson, but only because of that deep ball ability. Like at the tight end position, he could literally go like 3 for 80 and be fantasy relevant.
That's true.
He doesn't need a lot because he'll get those deep ball receptions. So he doesn't need to get a lot of targets to be a starting wide receiver. So I'm not sitting here projecting that he's going to be like over 1,000 yards a season and he's going to be like amazing. But I genuinely think he could get like those Isaiah likely like stat lines of like 3 for 81 and go, yeah, that's 11 PPR fantasy points. That puts him at tight end 10 and could do that. Yeah. And if he gets a touch, then you're away at you're away at the races. He's top 5.
Yeah. Easy peasy.
Yeah, I just see a pathway to him being more relevant than some of these other guys who will go like 5 for 40.
Yeah. So at tight end, all you need is that couple of big catches and you're golden. And then if you take it to the house, like you say, you're talking stream ball tight end, top 3, book it.
Yeah,
Happy days.
So I think we've covered these positions quite well. I will say that I think there's more opportunity for tight ends in this class to be fantasy relevant and to get starting jobs because I think there's several teams that need tight ends. And I think it will be interesting to see how it all shakes up. I think there's a couple that could be elite, a couple that could start, a couple to keep an eye on and be flex worthy. So I think this is quite a nice deep tight end class for pretty okay talent. But the top 2, I think, are just a class above everybody else. But there are some players that are of interest. So I think it's going to be interesting. I think this class is far more interesting than the quarterback class. I think we've done the quarterback class. There's not much to really kind of write home about or fall in love with. But, I think the tight end class is going to be interesting. And I think when we get into running backs and then wide receivers, there's more really interesting players to talk about. As I've done my rookie sort of pre-draft rankings, I have 7 players across all the fantasy relevant positions. That's not kicker, by the way, because I don't think any kickers are going to be elite. I have 7 of the quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight ends that I think could be potentially elite players. None at quarterback, 2 at tight end. So we still got 5 to go next couple of weeks.
Interesting. I look forward to that because I imagine. Well, I think probably I'm going to go with we have 4 the same.
I think that's probably likely. Yeah,
I do know your list.
I mean, I have 3 running backs and 2 wide receivers.
Okay, well, we've definitely got 3 the same then.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm looking forward to that.
I'll also preface that I haven't put Travis Hunter in that list because I'm not 100% sure and won't know till draft night whether he's going to be a receiver or not.
If he was a receiver.
Could be, not sure. It really will depend on where he goes, and it really depends on what they announce him as. If he's a full-time wide receiver, not playing corner, then I'm more interested in thinking he could be elite. I think if he's splitting time, I'm less interested in thinking he's going to be an elite wide receiver.
If he is a wide receiver only, where do you have him in your rankings?
If he was a full-time wide receiver, as in he is going to be the legit, all he's going to do is be a wide receiver, he will probably be 2.
You got T-Mac at 1, right?
No.
Oh, I love this.
I have T-Mac at 2. T-Mac sits at 2. I have Hunter at 5 because I don't know what he's going to do.
Yeah.
So I caveat, he is the first player that I have a genuine asterisk on that's like the range of outcomes is anywhere from like 2 to 50. 50 being he doesn't play wide receiver at all. Like he the range of outcomes is massive. I can't get there on 1. I think there's a player here that is incredibly underrated and a player that I think couldn't be that genuinely elite talent.
Okay. Let's not spoil it. Come back for the wide receiver show, everybody. Murf, anything else before we jet?
No, I don't think so. I think, we're getting closer and closer to draft month. So,
draft day.
Yeah, so that's a draft day. So, if you've got questions you want to ask about your rosters, then definitely get in contact and drop us some messages, and we can definitely do that. But we'll be bringing the heat more and more. We'll start dialing it up. We'll start getting some guests on, and we'll start really sort of ramping up the material. Now we know what we're going to be doing in 2025. So it's an exciting time. I'm really looking forward to, how 2025 starts to shape up.
Absolutely. We are well into draft month, Rush Nation. Come back for the star positions for fantasy football in your rookie drafts, because as Murf said, the quarterback class is, pretty meh. The tight ends are going to be good, but not everybody can draft one of them. But everybody can have a running back this year because the class is massive. You can have a running back, and you can have a running back, and you can have a running back. And until we talk about Rush Nations, as always, don't forget, keep rushing.